Welcome to Business Mastery with Dawn Kennedy, your quick under 45-minute dose of expert insights and strategies to make a positive impact on your business and life. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Today, we're diving into a really fun topic, and this is going to be focused on you, the entrepreneur, and we're going to be talking about wishes and delicious delusions. And I can't wait to get into talking about this, and hopefully you'll have some great takeaways and things with a new perspective. So, Damion, thank you so much for joining me today.
Don, it's great to be here. I'm really excited about what we're about to talk about.
Me too. Can you tell everyone who you are and who you serve?
Yeah, so I'm Damion Lupo. I'm an entrepreneur. I've started 70 plus companies, and I basically serve Main Street type of people, just normal people that are trying to break free of the financial shackles that are on pretty much everybody. What I call money modern day slavery. So my mission is 1 million people that have their financial bondage broken. And so I'm serving people in different ways, different tools to help break those shackles so that they can actually live without thinking about money. Kind of like Forrest Gump said in Forrest Gump on the Bench when he said, invested in a little fruit company, and now I just don't have money is just one less thing I have to think about or worry about. And that's really what we're doing.
Yeah, because that is that next part of freedom, isn't it? So we started companies a lot of times to get time freedom and have some flexibility, and then we ended up working 200 hours a week for the first few years to get it started. But yeah, ultimately you want to get to the place where it's not really a concern of yours. So I love that. All right. So why wishes and delicious delusions? Let's just start with that amazing topic.
Well, you kind of alluded to it. Like there's a lot of things that we wish for and we hope for, and the problem for most people is that there's a delusional state around what it takes to get somewhere, how fast things are going to happen, and then we get deluded. And I'm guilty of this too, where we get into something and we keep going for more. So we think, oh, this business is here to serve me. I'm serving other people, and then years later, we're working 200 hours a week, and we go, what's happening? And it's never enough. So there's a whole series of delusions that we create for ourselves based on our monetary belief systems and scarcity. I mean, I've had many people that have come to me and said, okay, I've got to work another 10 years. And I go, you literally have X number of millions of dollars and you're spending virtually nothing. Why? And they don't even have a good answer,
Right.
or their businesses are basically killing them. And I've done that too, where I'm just grinding along. And after having gotten really, really wealthy monetarily, I'm thinking, what am I doing here? I'm still working around the clock, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Is there anything else? And so a lot of times the question is, are you doing this for the money or are you doing it for the purpose? And if it's the purpose, if there's a mission, then it totally makes sense because it's like you're doing your favorite thing. But if it's for the money, which a lot of people end up doing, there's often there's a reset that's needed. Otherwise you end up just dying at your desk.
So let's talk about these 70 companies you started. I'm assuming that it was because once you got to a certain place, they were no longer your purpose, right? So did something else. And by the way, I'm also a serial entrepreneur. Most entrepreneurs I know, and according to statistics, it's 2 to 5 businesses over a lifetime if they're a founder. It's not always just one, although there are those that do. So let's talk about this honesty with yourself and when you kind of lost the delusion of this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life, and you went and did something else.
Well, what's interesting when you start multiple businesses over a period of time, you tend to learn more than you make. Meaning you make some money, you lose some money, you learn. Like I look at things as winning and learning versus winning and losing. And most of those businesses didn't end up being that profitable. They were just incredible opportunities to stair step. And that's what it's all about. It's not about picking the perfect thing or saying, okay, I got to have the exact right thing at the right time. It's about doing something. Like that's a constant stumbling block for people. They want to have the exact right thing and they don't allow themselves to go do something that might be quote unquote wrong. And because they're trying to have the thing that's the winner. And the reality is it doesn't matter whether you win. It matters if you learn. And if you win, it's usually the worst lesson because you're not really learning anything. You're just thinking that you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. So I'm much more of a fan of doing something and then saying, that was not the right thing. Let me go figure something else out. Let me look for a bigger problem. Let me do something that is more missional. And one of the mistakes that people make is they look for their passion and then the passion wears out when it gets hard. And that's where the difference between passion and mission are so different. Mission, you'll still do it when it hurts. Passion, you're like, oh man, this sucks. This is not fun. And it's a grind and I don't want to do it. And then you find another passion. So you start having an affair on your thing, and then nothing really works and you wonder what's happening. Well, it's because you didn't have a mission that was driving you, your North Star.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. How do you know whether or not the business you're actively in right now today is your North Star vision, your North Star mission?
If it's serving other people in a significant way, then you've got something that's pulling you. If you're thinking about how you're getting more money or you're getting more toys, or like if that, and I know the difference because that was me for the first 10 years, where it was okay, more money. And it was, people, I was helping people with their housing, but it was too internal. It was mostly about Damien and how rich Damien was going to get. When you look out and you look at your life, and sometimes this takes other people, it takes masterminds, mentors that'll tell you the truth. And they say, you don't have a mission, you just have a thing that's making you money. And a lot of times people are lost, which is why inherited money is so weird, because there's not really much of a mission for most people. Some people do have the conversion, but when you're building something, if you understand that you're building it for other people, and that what's really important is to make sure that it's big enough. If you're saying, okay, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to serve one person, it may be useful to that person, but it's probably not touching your potential. And the problem with most people is they get to the end of their lives, they tiptoe safely, and then they end up there at their at death's door, and they say, "Oh, dang." And there's the regret around not really going for it, and they left potential on the side. And that's the problem. If you're tapping into your potential, and this is about thinking 10x, it's about stretching yourself into what's maybe possible. We tend to play way too safe, and we underestimate because we don't think big enough. And I think everybody should be reading The Magic of Thinking Big by Schwartz. And it really will derail the small thinking, which is what we're all taught to do to play safe.
Right. Yeah. Safety is the thing. So it's interesting because this kind of comes full circle, right? So you start your business, you have that optimism bias. And all of a sudden you get so far in, and you're like, I don't know. And now it becomes a moneymaker thing because you've made it into the past the early adopters, you made it into the, early majority. And now it's making profit, lots and lots of profit. So now, yeah, it becomes that place of what am I gonna do with it next? Is this really what I wanna be doing? And then what happens is that purpose, I guess, starts to fall off maybe because it wasn't really purpose in the first place. So the optimism bias becomes insanely negative, and all this thing is good for is a cash cow, right? So then that continues to cycle though, doesn't it? Unless we break that cycle, whether it's by starting a new business or just changing our positioning inside of what we're already doing.
It goes both ways. In fact, we tend to we look at something and we say, "Oh, this is making money and I'm bored," or it's not making enough, and we get frustrated and we go look for something that's more interesting, more exciting, instead of saying, "Okay, what?" Sometimes you do need to kill your baby. I mean, let's be real. Sometimes businesses, people that have the horse and buggy, or AI is going to disrupt a lot of things, and so it's better to get in front of that and say, "Okay, what's going to disrupt me? Can I disrupt myself, or should I be looking for something else?" So there's a time and a place to say I'm out. But most of the time people tend to jump out because it's either boring or it's too hard, and they get lethargic or lazy. And so there's a series of things. Usually what I see is people, they're trying to satisfy the need for variety. It's one of the basic human needs. And so they go, I got certainty pretty well nailed down. It's kind of like in a marriage. People have certainty and then they go have an affair because they want variety, and then they blow up the certainty, or they have
Right.
certain, loss of everything. So like if you can find it, people say, I want to do something exciting. I'm looking at these investments in Nicaragua, and I go, all right, well, what you're clearly looking for is excitement. Why don't you take up skydiving? Just don't go with me because I've jumped 4 times and had 4 accidents. So there's an opportunity for you to satisfy the need without putting your money at risk. Your investing really shouldn't be the place where you get all the excitement in your life, because you'll tend to do things based on your glands. It'll be emotional, and that tends to be where you gave up thinking. Like your gut instinct is gave up thinking. That is what people do because they're bored, and that's not really a good way to make money.
So where do we see this boredom? Like, if there were red flags that were going to jump up and say, "Hey, this is starting to become a bit of a problem, and we need to maybe get in a mastermind or find a mentor or somebody who will tell us the truth." What are the first red flags are we looking for?
asking yourself that question, is it the time? Because you're probably
Is it
saying,
the time?
like, it's like when you think, I probably should fire somebody, you're like 6 or 12 months behind.
Right, when you should have fired
There so I have a a thinking around the mentor, the mastermind, people that are my coaches, the people that are showing me my blind spots, that they need to be in my life at all times, and the times that I've not had them were the times I had the biggest losses, the biggest pains, and when I have them, it's literally just saying, "What am I missing?" And then being open to them telling me the truth. So I don't think that there's a single example of anybody that shouldn't have a mastermind and a mentor. Like, literally the mentor that's been before you, that's done the things, that's 10 to 20 years before you in terms of experience. They might even be younger than you, but it's the actual experience where they can see around the corner, not somebody that's 26 that happened to make a bunch of money on YouTube and is telling you how to invest. That is baloney. You want somebody that's actually been through cycles, they've done things, they've built businesses, they've done investments, and then you want masterminds where you can be a part of something because you tend to learn with other people talking about their stuff and then you processing with them. And I just don't see any downside. I see unlimited upside by having those at all times, not just when you need help. When you need help, it's like calling an attorney when you have a problem. You should have had the attorney from the beginning to avoid the problem. And so if you're wondering, should I do this? The answer is yes.
Right. Right. All right. So let's get into what you do, which is helping people invest, and getting them, again, to that place where money is no longer a problem and they have to take up skydiving.
Yeah, so this started with giving people power and control over their retirement money, and it evolved. So in the beginning, like 12 years ago, I was watching my dad towards the end of his life where he was scared he was gonna run out of money, and he did. He didn't have any tools, he didn't have any skills. He had this really goofy strategy around moving between bonds and stocks, and he thought it was very sophisticated, and the more I learned over the years, I realized it was literally a dumb strategy, and it never worked, but he convinced himself it did. And the bottom line is he didn't have people around him. He was the smartest man in the room because he was the only man in the room. He's the only person. And so I saw this and I thought, okay, you know what? Most people's their hope for prosperity and retirement is a retirement account. They're not going to eat your house, and Social Security is basically going to feed you. But what are you going to do with all the things that you want to do? You're not going to do anything with them if you don't have resources. So I started helping people take control of their retirement accounts, which forces people to build the muscle around investing. Because what most people do is they hand their money over to a financial advisor and then just hope it's big when they get retired.
Yeah, when they need it.
Opium is not a good strategy. Smoking it is terrible. And so the shift is giving people power. So I started EQRP, which is a way to take 401ks and IRAs and then invest those in things that you understand, real estate, gold, Bitcoin, all these things. And that sort of evolved into other things, mentoring people and building a community of thousands of people that are all looking to take responsibility for their retirement. They're not just handing their money over. Like, this is the wrong community for somebody that's going to abdicate responsibility. It's been really cool seeing people say, okay, I want to take control. I am responsible. And then creating these different companies and different investment opportunities for them along the way so that because the problem is people say, yes, I want to do it. And then they go, now what do I do? And so we've found ways to give people opportunities to be a part of things that they would have never seen or been able to even potentially invested in. And that's where Frame Tech came about. And it's what's happening is now there are thousands of people that are on this path together in a community. And so it satisfies a lot of human needs: certainty, variety, social connection, love. It's really wild when you have a big mission, and the big mission is 1 million people financially free.
Yeah, that is a huge mission. I love that. So let's talk a little bit because I have some notes here. I always take notes when we do the pre things and about the dangers of judgment and not being honest with yourself. That was a huge note I made here about talking about the psychology of judgment and how that gets in the way of being able to break free from those wishes and delicious delusions, because you have to get out of those in order to be able to do all the things you're talking about. There's a mindset piece to everything we do, and I would say particularly business owners because we tend to be so good at the one thing that we're good at. We don't necessarily see, like you said, blind spots in places where we're not necessarily, meeting our own other needs.
Yeah, the judgment happens both on our like to ourselves. We basically are judging ourselves because we think other people are judging us, and this I mean this starts with when we're kids and we're being judged constantly at school, and you're trying to figure out how do you get your A's, or how to be on the right team, or how to have your peers like you. And there's this constant, and it comes back to our self-concept and our self-worth and how we see ourselves. So it's funny, a lot of times I've had people hire me over the years to do some, they'll come and they'll say, I want mentoring. And I go, well, I'm not really doing that, but I end up doing it. And we end up doing more work on their psychology and stuff outside of investing, because that's the problem. That's what they need to actually fix. And the judgment thing is a huge thing. People tend to focus a lot of effort on significance, meaning how significant am I in other people's eyes? And so then you're constantly thinking about it. The reality is they're not even thinking about you that much. In our minds, we think they are. And so we spend all this time trying to have a shiny object, or a trophy wife, or a trophy husband, or like all these different things, or making more money because we think it'll make us happier. And so there's this judgment that we inflict on ourselves. And the reality is nobody really cares. They're too busy thinking about themselves. And so that's the first lesson. It's okay, what's and this isn't about being selfish, except it is. It's about what's best for you. If you're a train wreck, you're not going to serve anybody. And it's like the oxygen masks on the plane. What do
Yeah.
they tell you? They say, put the dang thing on your face first before you help somebody else. People go, oh, I need to think about what they're thinking. I need to help them. And they turn into martyrs, or messed up the disasters, instead of getting their own crap straight. And what's hard is that getting your own stuff straight is the hard work. It's easy to tell somebody else to fix their life. Oh man, you had a bad relationship and you're making bad investment decisions. That's easy. It's easy to judge. What's painful is when you acknowledge the truth about your own stuff, and you look at your money, your credit cards, your cash, your calendar, and you're like, oh man, this is a lot of problems, and it's going to take a lot of work. That's the hard one. So we tend to deflect and point out everybody else's crap.
So let's talk about the judgment of ourselves, where we judge ourselves as too busy to take on this work, or we judge ourselves too far along to take on this work. And, again, I'm a huge proponent of mindset work and mentoring, and spotting patterns that cause sabotage, which you could actually accidentally inflict in your business, right, without knowing it. Um, what do we do, or where do we start from this idea that we actually have to take a moment and look at this stuff, and it shouldn't just be in passing in a podcast episode? Like, we need to stop after listening to this and go, hey, but how do we start doing that?
So there's something that came up. I've moved a lot, and I always tell people either I'm in the military or in witness protection, because I've just moved a lot, and it's mostly opportunistic. There's just things the places to be in, and so every time I've moved, I've had to drag around my stuff. And there was one of my moves back in Austin. I pulled up in my U-Haul truck, and I was about to start unloading, and I said, wait a second. I went into the house, and I looked around, and I started imagining what it would look like, because it was blank. It was blank slate. And I said, what would I want here? I want this, and I want this couch here, and I want a certain type of couch. And I was like, that kind of couch is not in my U-Haul. It's a different kind of couch that doesn't fit. So I did that with the whole house, and it turned out virtually everything that I owned was not the right fit. So I took the U-Haul and drove to the Goodwill and basically gave away my life and started over. And it was really empowering, because most of us, it's so painful to try to get rid of stuff. We go, oh man, the momentum of this stagnation, the stuff in our life, the people, the habits, all that stuff, we tend to just keep doing it because it's easier. So the first thing to do, to your question, is think blank slate. Take everything out of your life, put it outside of your life, and say, okay, I got nothing. I have no friends, no money, no investments, no, like you probably should take your kids and put them outside, because they are going with you. And I recommend keeping your spouse at the moment. But he's really getting to a place where it's like, all right, I have nothing. What do I want? What is actually going to be beneficial to my life and my mission, my purpose on this planet? And you ask, okay, what kind of people do I want? What kind of work do I want to do? What kind of environment do I want? And it's so this zero-based thinking. You start with what you know today about life, and then you start looking around. You go, man, I want X type of people, and I got some other type of people that are not helping me go where I want to go. And I've got some investments. I've got some things that don't fit. So you do that and you say, okay, well, those are the things I want. And then you get really clear about what's true. And what's true comes from the 3 C's: your credit cards, your cash, and your calendar. And when you get clear on what's really going on, nothing's truer than what you're spending money on. Like that is, you can't lie about it. It's black and white. There's no gray. It is what it is. And when you look at those things, it's a little terrifying. And so you go, all right, so this is what I'm spending money on, and I don't like it. but I'm acknowledging it. And it's helpful to have somebody ask questions and then not don't get all wound up with your feelings, but just acknowledge this is what I'm doing and it's serving a need of some sort. And then your calendar, what are you spending all your time with? Those are the things that you can physically change instantly. And so being clear about what's real, what you really want and what you're actually doing. And then from there, it's having the accountability with somebody that's going to help you and keep you focused on that thing so you don't get derailed by your own psyche.
Right. Yeah. You said an amazing phrase, which was the momentum of your stagnation. And that is like, boom. That you always hear things like you're going to get more of, what you don't change, those kinds of things. But I don't think it hit in the same way as saying, you know, you're causing this because you bring it all in and you decide whether or not you want to change it, like with your home and the things that go in it. But the momentum of your own stagnation, I don't think I've ever heard that before. And I also don't think I've heard any phrase that was that clear that staying stuck, it continues to go, right? And I think we think of stagnation sometimes as things just stop in place, but they're not stopped at all.
No, it's a continuation of the same. You're it's basically Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day
Yeah.
isn't it's just you're on a merry-go-round, and that's where most people spend their entire lives. They don't have 20 different years experience. They have 1 year 20 times over and over again, and it's just a little bit grayer, maybe a little bit less fit. A few people have it's just we're not conscious. We tend to just keep going through things and it can be kind of painful. It's also incredibly liberating when you become conscious because you can't fix a lie, but you can change things when you're acknowledging the truth. And I mean, I've reinvented I wrote a book, in fact, called Reinvented Life back in 2012. And knowing that you can reinvent, what I know for a fact is that most people will not change. Whoever they were 20 years ago is basically who they're going to be today, and it's who they're going to be in 20 years. It's That's how we're wired. We want consistency. We don't want to change things because you're basically tearing yourself apart. It's like going to the gym and breaking yourself and then you build new muscle. It hurts. And then I also know that somebody can change. I'm an example. I'm not an alien like Elon. Love the guy, but I'm not that far out there. I'm just, I'm your neighbor. And I know it's possible to change if you're willing to tell yourself the truth. And usually that requires somebody holding space for you to say, okay, what is true? And when you get to the truth, you can do something with it. It's it's what Larry Wingen says in his books. He's the pit bull of personal development. He talks about his book covers tell the story, the title, shut up, stop whining, get a life. Your life is your own damn fault. I mean, these are true statements and they kind of tell the story right there. And when you say, you know what, he's right. Now, if you argue with the story, you argue with the book, your life is screwed. You're going to be in Groundhog Day perpetually until you're dead. When you say, he is right. Now what do I do? Or you could do anything you want to do. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that personal accountability for everything is a very, very tough thing to do because we like to, as humans, look at the circumstances, right? And being able to reflect back into your own patterns is terrifying sometimes when you realize that it's Groundhog Day and it's happened for the fifth time or the ninth time, or you always hire the wrong person, or you always, you know what I mean? Or you won't break up with that supplier because it goes back 9 generations, whatever it is. I think you're right. It is 100% more empowering to say, um, I have to look at this and I might decide that 60% of it I'm okay with or happy with or whatever. And it's 40% I need to look at or 80-20 or 90-10 doesn't matter. This is something though that is going to keep going because again, going back to that momentum of stagnation, every time you make gains, let's say 20%, that becomes like your new level of where you could potentially stagnate.
There along with what you're saying, it's really interesting how I saw something, it was on X, I think, and it hit me, and what I took away from it was that one of the things that it really hit me hard was when you look at people, and when I say look at people, look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, is this how people are seeing you and how you're seeing yourself if you're honest? Evil people have excuses.
Mm.
Not evil people own their reality and they take action. So if you're hearing yourself or other people with all sorts of reasons why your life is or why this happened and it's not, this is what happened, I did this, and here's what I'm doing different today, then it's that to me, that was a really good way to look at people. And instead of saying, "Oh, they had some rough things," I'm like, "All right, I'm just gonna," because who wants to work with or be in a relationship in any form with an evil person? I don't ever. Like, it's hard no. So if I look at people that way, I just don't have any I don't have any respect for people that have excuses. I don't care what the excuse is. The question is, what happened and what are you doing next? And if all you're talking about is the excuses in your own brain or around other people, then you're just gonna sit where you are. Stagnation has taken root and you're done.
Right. Yeah, and evil as a word tends to have some kind of religious or moral value. And really what you're saying is somebody who is choosing to blame everything and everyone and anything else. And that means that's a person who has no accountability. And I know we've seen that in psychology, right? Sociopaths and what is it, psychopaths and those people. So the word evil doesn't necessarily mean that there's a quote unquote moral a religious connotation. It literally is no responsibility, no taking any sort of, because we all want to say that we take responsibility for everything, we take accountability for things, but when you sit down and you're looking at something, you're like, man, the market, and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We want to be that accountable person, and there are people that no matter what, they will never for 1 second accept that they had any role in any result or outcome, that they were a part
That
of in any way.
and the reason that I use that word in particular is because there's leverage in that word. When you have a word that has so much energy, evil, like who wants to say I'm evil? Nobody.
Right.
And and if you look at somebody that's evil, you are literally going to repel yourself. If you say, "Oh, it's that person is they've got issues." Well, you still probably that's not enough. But if you say evil, nobody is gonna look at you like you're sane if you're like, "Oh, yeah, I do work with evil people." They're gonna look at you like you're crazy. So it gives you leverage to make decisions that you need to do, like, don't work with this person and don't be that person. If you look at yourself as, somebody that's ridden with excuses and you say, "You know what? I'm evil." It's like, "I don't wanna be evil." Well, then I need to get rid of the excuses. I need to own it and take action. Then I'm not evil. It's such a powerful way to get leverage on yourself like, instantly, and that's what most people do to break yourself out of the stickiness of being in the trenches and just being stuck and always having a reason for everything that's going wrong and not achieving your dreams, not being in the environment, the world that you wanna be in. You've got to do something different, and
Yeah.
so that's the power in choosing those things and, putting aside and maybe not putting aside, it's the spiritual, religious, whatever it is, find the things that make you uncomfortable and that'll jar you out of your reality if your reality isn't what you want for your life.
Right, and again, it's getting out of that momentum of stagnation. I'm stealing that. That was a fantastic, term. I think it's phenomenal. So, my last question, and again, these are the notes that I took down. You have I have a big note here about teaching people that one of the things money opens up is people have to be honest with themselves. So if they're honest with their money, but not honest with themselves, what's the difference and why does it matter?
Well, I think a lot of people think that they're pretty honest, but then they lie about their money. Okay, you can just how you get away with it. You can say I'm an honest person, and I go, you're lying to yourself about your money. And usually, where that comes from, people have certain beliefs about life, and then they have certain things that they'll say, and then their money habits are completely different. So to me, there's a lack of integrity, and
Yes,
they'll say things. They'll say I'm a good person, and I'm good to my family, and I'm good to my community, and then they lie about their money, and so there's a disconnect, which is why there's this it's unease that turns into disease because you're not being true and honest, and it creates a lot of toxic energy, and physically there's a problem with that in our bodies and then around us. So
right.
being honest about all the things, and this is like I mentioned, masterminds and mentors and therapists, like getting the stuff out of you that's real instead of. But most therapists aren't going to go look at your credit card statement. If I'm working with somebody or a mastermind, we're talking about that stuff. We're talking about the
Yeah.
credit card, the cash. We're talking about the reality when somebody says, "I'm gonna be a billionaire, that's my goal." I'm like, "You're still in debt on your car." And so you're trying to leapfrog into something and that's delusional. You can be 10x, but if you do 10,000x, you're literally, there's nothing that's connected to that reality. So there's a growth stretch, but people that come to me and say that, I just go, you're wasting everybody's time because you don't have any skills. You wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. You wouldn't even know what to do with 10 million. You'd freaking give it away. You'd like lose it, which is what lottery winners do. So there's acknowledging the truth. And the one question that I always ask people is, when you're going and saying, I'm looking for a coach or a mentor, or I'm looking for a change, question is, how committed are you? When most people will say, I don't know if this person is worth it, or if this thing is worth it with whatever they're doing. And I say, you're not committed. That's the problem. You can go to a dodo bird and hire them. If you're committed, you're going to go do the work. They might just breathe and you're like, man, this is awesome. And you're coming up with ideas and you're ready to change. But until you're ready, it doesn't matter. You should never spend a dime. When you're ready, it doesn't matter who you get, what you pay. You're going to do the work. And that's where all the change happens anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can everybody find you, join your community, lurk your social media? Because it sounds like you put some fun stuff out, and, find more about you.
So I wrote this 10-page document. It's called the 10 Steps to 10 Million. It takes you 10 minutes. It's a 10-year plan, and you can compress it if you want. But it's leveraging off of all the stuff I've done in creating wealth, losing wealth, creating millions, losing millions, being homeless, and ultimately going to millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in net worth, and building companies that are hundreds of millions, and even now, FrameTech right at $1 billion. And it's the principles behind those things. So there's a great book called Principles that you should definitely read. Everybody should read it or listen to it. Ray Dalio's book. This is like the hack. It's basically what I learned, what I did, and the things that I've seen that are consistent. And you can download it. You just go to turnkeyretirement.com. It's giving you the essence of what it takes for you to actually stop thinking about money when you move past it. But you got to do the work. You can't just go, I read a good book on fitness and then be good. Like, you got to go do the reps. And that's what this is. And you can digest it, you can do it fast, and then take what you love and throw away the rest. That's how you get a part of my brain, and you maybe skip 10 or 20 years of my journey and hack it. That's a pretty smart play.
That's an amazing play. All right. So we will put that link down inside the show notes, and then also in the description for YouTube. Anywhere else you want people to come hunt you down, LinkedIn or socials?
I think I'll say this. We talked about it in the beginning, but it's worth saying again, and to keep in mind. You have no idea how free you'll be until you stop thinking about what other people think about you. There were a lot of things that I hesitated on in the beginning. 30 years ago, I was concerned what my parents might think, my friends. I'm going a different path. Your path is different than everybody around you. You might be similar, but you have a different path. And so when you give them all the power and control, you're really at their whim, and if you're thinking big to your potential, you're going to blow right past people. And the only way you're really free is when you stop caring what they think, and you go for your dreams. That's where all the power and joy is, when you actually are living on purpose. But you can't do that if you're thinking about, what are they going to think of me? Because you're going to look like an idiot all the time, because you're going to think you look like an idiot, but nobody's actually looking at you anyway. So that's one of those lessons I learned earlier. And now I do what I believe in, and I trust my instincts. After 30 years of being out there and all the stuff, you earn the ability to trust yourself, but it doesn't start that way. You don't start off at 20 years old or brand new in business or investing and go, yeah, I trust my instincts. You don't even have any instincts. Your instincts are based on what you knew in high school, or whatever you've done. So that's the sooner that you can let go of that judgment, the more powerful it is for you to be free from everything that really doesn't matter anyway.
Love it. I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for this awesome conversation on wishes and delicious delusions. And I appreciate all of your insights. So thank you for joining me.
I could be here. Thanks so much.
All right. I'll talk to y'all next time on the next episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to DawnKKennedy.com, and you can now check us out on YouTube, as well as, of course, any of your favorite platforms that host podcasts. Take care.